Oh, you fucking know I'm not gonna go the route of the Death Star. Um, you don't have a clue. Um, to begin with, I just saw this video, right? Not this video. That video.
Some flavor.
Okay, shut up.
Bringing their weapons to bear. Then the Borg. The Borg would have to somehow catch the Death Star completely off guard, which is very unlikely. But
in my mind, it's too big for any of its weapons to be really successful against it. The only chance that the cube has, in my mind, is to quickly take apart of the Death Star, assimilate it, and adapt its weapons to destroy it quickly.
okay, take a part of it. Using boarding action? This is... Who in their right hive mind would even attempt this?
You've got to be kidding me, right? The Death Star was taken over by an R2-D2. Hello. If an R2-D2 is capable of getting into the Death Star and getting any amount of control of a low-level system, like the trash, imagine what Borg nanoprobes can do, because they don't give a shit about your security. You're getting infected. The Death Star taken over. There isn't a lot that you can do in this case. I don't even know. Okay, you gotta think about just the fact that there is the ability to connect with, like, if you had an R2-D2 unit, assimilate that, you have enough information to destroy the Death Star. Any unit, because it has the interface type of mechanism. So even if you didn't know how to regularly hack the system, you could figure out all of the technology necessary to hack the system from there. Which way am I? Am I on landscape? I forget what I did last. Let me check for a second here. Okay. I forget if I'm on landscape so I can go on that. Yes, I am. Okay. Let's just go into that mode so we can, whatever. So here's the thing about it, right? It's not firepower. You went the wrong route. You see, yeah, they're able to flood things with radiation. Borg can resist radiation to a degree. So many different types of shielding. The fact that humans can just go around unnoticed and take out a control center and whatever else crazy shenanigans that they did in the movies. Seriously though, if you have nanoprobes, this isn't even a question. If you don't have nanoprobe type defenses, you don't have a prayer. So I was looking at all the different stuff that they have with this,
Sort of.
and it's like, how many times have you ever seen a disruptor change its frequency? Doesn't have to, it's a broad spectrum frequency, right? Which means it doesn't have a specified range that it can hit and be fine. It has all sorts of ranges that it will hit and go directly through because it doesn't give a damn. It's like the rainbow of lasers. So you have just absolute energy beam stuff going on. And that's fun and everything. The thing that I'm stuck on, right, is what if you have whatever. Like you have the blasters, they're shooting at them. They walk about as fast as one of their drones, which is not fast. So you have some time to be able to get to them. But again, all they'd have to do, if they really wanted to, assimilate the Death Star. So what is required? Well, you somehow ram the Death Star. I don't know, their shields would probably do some major damage to the Borg cube before it can get through. But a like direct, just a mass of something going towards the Death Star's shields, that's not enough. So you gotta have a way to get in there in the first place. Again, if you're only able to encounter the Death Star in this scenario, you're not able to encounter any other outside technologies. You could observe their shielding and how it's multi-layer, it's got all these different redundancies. It has the ability to just work, and even particles are part of it, apparently. And even still, its own hull is enough that it doesn't really do that much. But once you get under the shielding, right, then you're able to do lots of damage. I'm trying to think back at how they even got under the shielding to begin with. But again, if you could get people in, if you have enough people that there are some expendables, some who hide behind maybe a crate or something, all they have to do is then just put their nanoprobes into some tube somewhere. They end up spreading out, going to whatever systems, infecting them, taking them over, replicating, maybe just multiplying as much as they can. Be able to get to whatever systems that can have information, bypass any of the normal, um, like any technology that they have to be able to try to keep regular interface connections out. Once you get to the like bits and pieces of the technology, it's like hot wiring. You can't protect yourself from everything. So whatever is directly accessible, it's going to be accessed, and it's going to be hard to not end up also having the ability to move through any other part of the ship, mass complex, whatever, and then go infect there as well. Not to mention, if you wanted to, and if you could, you would start infecting all sorts of people. You would end up with an entire, like, your millions of people that you're firing these weapons and using explosives at. They could be adaptive. They could figure out how to do things with whatever strategy that's more than just their regular go around mindlessly and then try to look at some control panels, because really you can't stop them even with um, the adaptive lasers of the Federation, because they adapt to the new phase frequency. With this setup, because they have multi-phase lasers, whatever amount would be shielded against, the rest of the beam is going through. So you're just going to melt straight through any of them. So in order to get purchase, you have to be sort of stealthy, or distraction, or if you can catch any of them, you can start assimilating them in like any amount of the innumerable amount of rooms that they have, and you'd have to make sure you have control over every single one of the rooms. And what if you can get in and then you can transport yourself within the ship, and you have like a transport enhancer or whatever else, gives you the ability to go directly into any section of the ship. There are so many sections, you'd have to be aware of exactly where you're being infected, and the more likely that the more numbers that they put into the system, the more likely that the infection is going to take hold. And then you have entire chunks of the Star Destroyer just absolutely um, take just
We didn't build the fastest computer. We've
shut up. Fucking ads. No. You got the technical expertise down, you got all the other things that you've thought of correctly. We had an R2D2 be able to go into any system. That's a regular interface. You take nanoprobes in there, and you interface not from a port, but directly to whatever systems. You're not only controlling anything else, you could just make the reactor shut off if you wanted to. Like, I'm possibly underestimating the Death Star's structural and technological security, because there is a gigantic amount of it, and you might be able to keep control over a large percentage of it. But again, if you have parts infected, if you have sectors where people are just going missing because, oh, instead of killing them, we now turn them into our ally, Borg, and the Borg turns we. I'm a Borg. Hi. Um, no, just kidding. But if we turn the Borg, turn um, any number of them into more Borg, well, that's now millions of people and guns that can fight against the drones, and the drones might be even easier to take over because kind of simple. Um, I don't know. I'm not seeing this one. Like they mentioned the super weapon. They mentioned the big laser. Yep. Yeah, if you could absolutely know about that laser, like where is they have a picture of like the tunnel or whatever. that the laser's going down. Where is that? It's like, yeah, that picture. That's a beautiful picture, by the way. Freaking this. That's awesome. Confinement beams and matter and everything. Craziness. I think if you have the
Torpedo, for example, did this by altering its transphasic configuration. On the other hand, species 8472 had a weapon powerful enough to completely destroy a planet, and it seems like the Borg were unable to adapt to a weapon that powerful. In conclusion, I think a Death Star...
Yeah, and keep in mind that weapon is
8472 is an organism. It's raw, just whatever into whatever function you want to make. It's crazy.
weaker than that of the Death Stars, because you see, it just did surface level damage. So that certainly bounds that nothing the Borg have can possibly deal with this.
would be able to take a Borg cube.
Again, if we're comparing apples to apples about the amount of energy output of Borg cube versus 8472 versus the Death Star, yes, okay. But again, with 8472, it's an organism, so it's kind of like the changelings, that they have the ability to control literally any part of their body. They live in an atmosphere and whatever else that's just crazy for their ability to just thrive. Ironically, the Borg have their own atmospheric homeland.
9.5 times out of 10. I think the only
9.5 times out of 10. I know he's trying to be fair, but this one just isn't. I'm sorry, it's just
chance
horribly
the Borg
unfair.
have is to get their drones on the Death Star and destroy it from the inside.
Exactly.
I think the station could have trouble against more than one cubes. However, perhaps the weapon is so powerful that it could overcome even the defensive capabilities of the Borg. I think that, however, is a question to answer on another day. Anyways, guys.
Nah, it's
So, okay. Tractor beams, all this other stuff. I mean, it all depends on how the encounter happens. If even one of the drones gets on this Death Star, there's the potential of infection, there's the potential of spread, there's this potential of any section of it being completely understood, taken over, and whatnot.
pretty straightforward.
Guys, thank you so much for watching.
Nah, the Borg don't have.
Perhaps the Death Star would have some problems, though I'm not necessarily convinced of that. We know that
Maybe if two or more of the Super Borg with the 3,000 kilometer per side cubes and they all were bristling with weapons that were comparable to that of the Empire, sure, why not? But as you see, no, they are minuscule weapons.
one-shot weapons used against the cubes were able to be continually effective if they modified some form of their weapons. The transphasic torpedo, for example, did this by altering its transphasic.
So the thing about the transphasic torpedo, it is changing the structure into a different type so that it can go through matter, which involves stuff like space and all of that jazz. Does Star Trek have phasing technology? I'm gonna have to watch stuff again because I kind of want to know all this stuff. But like, I kind of do. I remember they had better tech. Ironically, they had better technology in the prequels than in the original. Sorry, it's just how it is. You progress in your understanding, and then you develop the story better, and then you have whatever else. They should have really redone it from the ground up, but there's no way to do Star Trek correctly because of if you add more functions to people of the Force, people in the technology, all of the ideas of the conventions that once worked before, well, you end up wondering, well, why didn't they use that last time and all of that, and it becomes impossible to do anything correct about it.
Configuration. On the other hand, species 8472 had a weapon powerful enough to completely destroy a planet, and it seems like the
When I say completely destroy a planet, it's still orders of magnitude less than a Death Star laser. It's still an extremely powerful laser. It still somehow does destroy a planet. It's just not that range. But still, you have to fire the damn thing, and there's a chance that you can fire it multiple times or direct it towards the cube. But what if you end up not hitting the cube? What if you end up hitting, I don't know, sensor echo or something, which I don't think they can do. But then again, Star Trek did also learn about portals eventually. They straight up did. Now there's portals now in Picard. Spoilers for Picard. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think the fact that I end up wondering just I forget how much the R2D2 was able to do about controlling things like an elevator or whatever else in the system. How strong it was. I gotta watch them all again. Might as well. But even at first glance, I can't help but wonder, well, shit. You have the technology in there and whatever else. If you end up with, let's say, a TIE fighter goes out, tries to infiltrate the Borg cube or do something about it, or a bunch of them do. If they are able to get TIE fighter technology, it's possible that they could get whatever codes, they could get whatever shielding frequencies or something. They might be able to get in. They might be able to get the ability to infect the Star Destroyer itself, and then the Borg would just have the Star Destroyer, which I don't like the idea of, but they probably would be able to figure out some way of utilizing all that heat energy to do other things and actually make it dissipate in ways that are not just a gigantic tube leading out into space. You realize you don't need like a gigantic coolant tube is more energy dense motion than like what are you even doing with an exhaust port? Are you pushing stuff through it into outer space? I don't understand where the heat is going with the exhaust port method, because all you need to do is just have a giant set of tubes. Your the Death Star design is bad because that whole coolant system, again, if you were to take all that heat, molten heat, if you needed to, and push it out through tubing to the outside, you're not even thinking properly. Like, if you wanted to, you can cool down the Death Star with we got this amazing technology with the laser induced cold, laser and magnetism induced cold with the Bose-Einstein condensate. If you could use that to generate, if you can use stuff like that to generate cold, then you can just freeze chill all the matter around the reactors, and then you don't need to worry about external whatsoever. Like, you got all this, um, like, liquid nitrogen, you've got other stuff. How can you work with, what kind of heat are you working with in the core? And it's just something that I just don't know any of the specifications about any of it about. And I'm like, no, there's got to be ways to be able to work the Death Star that are just now that we have better technology is better than what they thought of when they wrote the Death Star. Because the Death Star's planning and design and whatever else isn't based off of good science for now. It's based on good science that was for then, and we know a lot more now. So would it have the exhaust port? Probably not. Even then, it's not impenetrable. Um, we totally got inside of there. We're able to dock with the damn thing. Like, it's vulnerable as frick. And then you're like, you're having to shoot a bunch of people, they're having to shoot a bunch of you, and it becomes like a stalemate inside there somehow, even though there are so many people. Like, you think about it, and people per area is only so dense, and whatever else. You only have so many that you can throw at whatever. One of the worst places to go is the goddamn um, docking bay, because they're just full of the tens of thousands of people that you can immediately deploy wherever. No, well, for the Borg's sake, that's actually the best place, because then you would just figure out ways of holding them. Like, you could use the gas, you could use whatever else, take all those people, infect them. Like, although they do have respirators. Yeah, that's true. A lot of them do have respirators. It would be able to handle certain things. Which is a very smart move when you think about it. I don't know. I say the Borg win. Which, yeah, it's scary. But again, if you had the Borg cube against something smaller than the Death Star, like anything else in their fleet, and then you end up having them assimilate that first, rise up the ranks, go a little hidden mode, and like you're trying to do force type sensitive to know things about people, and then suddenly people just start falling off your radar entirely because they're not force connected or whatever. They're these other things. Like, can the force detect robots? Probably. Still. but it takes like different, like, it's a whole thing. Anyway, I don't know. That's my take. It's not as robust. It's not as whatever else, but I mean, if we got a guy to be able to handle the garbage disposal, then we got a guy who I think we can bypass their technology in a heartbeat. If it was made with better technology, it would be less likely, but still possible because we have better technology in a Star Trek ship, and yet it is able to be taken over by the Borg. So that's not that's it's not the way you want to hope it goes.